In the previous class, we had applied the Schrodinger wave equation to a very simple system called particle in a one-dimensional box. Okay, we solved the Schrodinger wave equation and obtained an expression for energy and wave function. We discussed in greater detail about the salient features of energy and wave function of such particle, and we later extended this particle trapped in a one-dimensional box problem to a three-dimensional box problem, where we were introduced to a mathematical procedure called method of separation of variables, where we studied that a complicated three-dimensional problem can be converted into simple one-dimensional problems. Okay, so that is one of the general method that we use in quantum chemistry to deal with the Schrodinger wave equations containing more than one variable. In today's class, we will apply Schrodinger wave equation to chemistry related problems, okay, especially the spectroscopic problems. You have been studying spectroscopy in the this physical chemistry paper, okay, where you have been introduced to the rotational spectroscopy and vibrational spectroscopy. We use different types of model to describe the spectra of a molecule. Okay, for example, we use either rigid rotator model or non-rigid rotator model to describe the rotational spectra of a molecule. Similarly, we use an harmonic oscillator or an anharmonic oscillator model to describe the vibrational spectra of a molecule. So here in today's class, we will apply the Schrodinger wave equation to the rigid rotator model of a diatomic molecule. Okay, and in the later classes, we will apply the Schrodinger wave equation to the harmonic oscillator model of a diatomic molecule in order to explain the rotational and vibrational energies of these diatomic molecules. So before applying the Schrodinger wave equation to a rigid rotator, let us first understand some basic physics concept of rotating systems. So we will consider two types of system. In one system, a single particle of mass m is rotating about a fixed point O, and then we will consider a system containing of two particles which are rotating about each other. Okay, so we'll in the first part of this class we will try to understand some basic physics, okay, background related to rotating system, and in the next part of the class we will apply Schrodinger wave equation to a rigid rotator model. So if I consider some point O, okay, which may be origin or some reference point, and I have a particle at point P, okay, the mass of the particle is m. The distance or the position of this particle from the origin is represented by a vector r. So r represents the magnitude of the distance between these two points. Now suppose if the particle is revolving about this point O, okay, it is executing a circular motion. It is executing a circular motion. Let this particle be moving with a constant velocity v. Okay, so v represents the velocity of the particle. Okay, it is again a vector quantity. So since it is a vector quantity, the direction of this vector should be clearly specified. So what is the direction of the velocity of the particle exhibiting such type of motion? Okay, to know what is the direction of the velocity, let us assume that this particle is connected by some thread, okay, to this point O. So one person, okay, is standing at point O, and he is holding a rope, okay, in his hand, and the other end of the rope is attached to a particle of mass m, and he is swirling the particle, okay, he is rotating the particle about this point O. So this particle is exhibiting this rotational motion about this point O. At any instant of time, if I cut this rope, okay, if I cut this rope, we know that the particle would move in this direction, a direction tangential to the direction of the circular motion. So from this argument or from this observation, we can clearly say that this is the direction of the velocity of the particle. So if the particle is exhibiting circular motion in the anti-clockwise direction, this would be the direction of velocity. So the velocity, which is also called as linear velocity, okay, has a direction which is a tangential or tangent drawn at this point to the circle. So we have a particle of mass m and linear velocity v exhibiting a simple rotating motion, a circular motion. Now in a small instant of time, okay, a small instant of time delta t, let us assume that this particle, okay, has moved from point p to some point p dash, okay. The distance traveled is very small, okay, it is infinitesimally small, but in order to understand the concept clearly, I have magnified this distance, okay. So distance is very small. So in a small interval of time, the particle has traveled from point p to p dash. Remember, even though the position of the particle has changed, its distance, okay, its distance from this origin has not changed. So it is at the same distance r from this reference point. So the direction of this radius vector r has changed, but its magnitude has not changed. So let the distance traveled, okay, along this arc, okay, be delta s. So let delta s represent the distance, okay, delta s represent a small distance traveled by the point traveled by the particle when it moves from point P to P dash. So the length of this arc is delta s. Then we can express the velocity of the particle v is equal to limit as delta t tends to 0 delta s divided by delta t. This is the definition of velocity you have studied in physics, rate of change of displacement with respect to time. So it is the total distance traveled divided by the total time, okay. So that is the definition of velocity, okay. But since it is a rotational motion, it is always better to express any physical quantity that would rather represent or explain the rotational behavior of the particle. For example, one can describe the rotational motion in terms of the angle that is swept when the particle moves from P to P dash, and this angle is a better representation of the rotational motion when compared to the distance traveled. So we can better express the rotational motion in terms of the angle that is swept when the particle moves from P to P dash instead of the distance that is traveled. And we can establish the relation between delta s, the radius of the circle, and the angle delta t, the small angle delta t that is swept when the particle moves from point P to P dash. The relation is delta s is equal to r into delta t. This is a very known formula, okay. S is equal to r into theta is a well-known formula, okay, in trigonometry. That is the length of the arc, okay, s, which is very small, is equal to radius of the circle into the angle theta. So we have used that relation, delta s is equal to r into delta t, okay. So let us take this as equation 1. If I divide on both the sides by delta t, this equation would be delta s by delta t is equal to r into delta t by delta t. And if I now apply the limit delta t tends to 0 of delta s by delta t is equal to r into limit delta t tends to 0 delta t divided by delta theta divided by delta t. This, as according to equation 1, is nothing but the linear velocity of the particle v is equal to r. Now if you carefully look at this quantity, this is also one type of velocity, okay, because here we expressed velocity as rate of change of displacement with respect to time. Here we have rate of change of the angle theta with respect to time. So greater the speed of the particle, greater would be the angle of delta t, and therefore greater would be the angle of value of this quantity. So this value or this term represents some sort of velocity that is related, which represents the rotational behavior of the particle, and that velocity is called as the angular velocity omega. So angular velocity omega is nothing but rate of change of the angle with respect to time when the particle exhibits rotational motion. So this velocity v is the linear velocity, omega is called as angular velocity, and the relation between these two velocity is v is equal to r into omega. So this represents the linear velocity, which is much useful physical quantity for a particle moving in straight lines, that is linear motion, whereas this is called as angular velocity, and this quantity is much useful for describing the particle exhibiting rotational motion, and the relation between these two velocities v is equal to r into omega. So the role played by velocity v in the linear motion is replaced by angular velocity in circular motion or rotational motion. Now if nu represents the frequency of rotation, okay, expressed in cycles per second, if nu represents the frequency of rotation. So what do you mean by nu cycles per second? It means the particle in 1 second is revolving around the circumference of the cycle nu number of times. For example, if frequency is 100 cycle per second, it means the particle is revolving around the circumference 100 times per second. So nu represents the frequency of rotation, and omega represents how fast the particle is moving along the circumference of the circle. So there should be some relation between angular velocity and frequency. So what is that relation? Let us understand. Okay, so when the particle completes one cycle of motion, okay, so the particle is at point P and it completes one cycle and again it reaches the same point P, the total angle covered when this particle covers one cycle is 360 degree, that is 2 pi. So when the particle completes one cycle, it covers an angle 2 into pi, that is 360 degree. But here in 1 second the particle is completing new number of cycles because the frequency is new cycle per second. So when the particle completes new cycles, it means it is covering an angle 2 pi into nu, because in each cycle the angle covered is 2 pi, and therefore in new cycles the total angle covered is 2 into pi into nu. Okay, now the distance traveled, okay, by the particle is used to measure the velocity, but the angular velocity is not measured in terms of the distance that is covered, but it is measured in terms of the total angle that is covered during the rotational motion. And how did we define the angular velocity? The angular velocity is nothing but delta t tends to 0 delta theta divided by delta t, or you can simply write it as d theta divided by dt. Okay, or more roughly you can simply write it as total angle covered divided by total time. Okay, total angle covered divided by total time. Here in this case, what is the total angle covered in 1 second? In 1 second, okay, that is t is equal to 1. Okay, in 1 second, that is when t is equal to 1, the total angle covered is 2 pi into nu. Therefore, the angular velocity omega is equal to total angle covered 2 pi nu divided by time, that is 1 second. So therefore we get omega is equal to 2 pi into nu. Okay, so the angular velocity of the particle exhibiting rotational motion is related to the frequency. Okay, now let us calculate what would be the kinetic energy of the particle. Okay, generally the kinetic energy is calculated using the relation k is equal to half into mv square, where m is the mass and v is the velocity of the particle, that is actually linear velocity. But as I already told you, it is better to express the velocity here in terms of angular velocity. So we will use this relation v is equal to r omega. So v is nothing but r omega whole square. So the kinetic energy is half m r square into omega square. Therefore the kinetic energy of the particle rotating about point O is half into I into omega square. Okay, so this is the formula for calculating the kinetic energy of the particle revolving around the point at fixed distance r. That is kinetic energy K is equal to half into I omega square, where I is m into r square, that is mass into square of the distance from the point of reference. This is called as the moment of inertia. Okay, we will not discuss about it in much detail, but remember this moment of inertia, it is a characteristic of the system, it is the characteristic of the particle, because it depends on m, the mass, and it depends on the distance between that particle and some reference point O. So it is a characteristic of the particular system called as moment of inertia. And if I compare this equation half into I omega square with this linear equation, okay, this is the expression for kinetic energy generally we use for linear motion. K is equal to half mv square. So if I compare these two, we can see some analogies, okay, that can be observed between linear motion and rotational motion. So the LHS of both the equations represent kinetic energy. This is the linear kinetic energy, this is the rotational kinetic energy, and in the RHS you have similar term of similar expressions, half mv square and half I omega square, where this v and omega are analogous to each other. What does it mean? The role played by velocity v in a linear motion is similar to the role played by angular velocity in rotational motion. So LHS are corresponding quantities. In RHS v and omega are corresponding to each other. So we can establish a corresponding relation between mass and moment of inertia. So the role played by mass of the particle in the linear motion is replaced by the moment of inertia in the rotational motion. So this moment of inertia is some sort of mass that is associated with the rotating particle. Okay, it is only a mathematical correspondence. So we see that for every physical quantity in linear motion, you have an analogous or correspondent physical quantity in rotational motion. For example, the linear velocity is here replaced by angular velocity, mass is replaced by moment of inertia. Similarly, the linear kinetic energy is replaced by the rotational kinetic energy. So this is about some simple physics related to single particle rotating about a point O. Now let us consider two particles, because since we are applying Schrodinger wave equation to a rigid rotator model which contains two particles rotating about a fixed point, we should understand some basic physics related to rotating system containing two particles. So now let us consider two particle system. So before studying the two particle system, let us briefly deviate to an important concept called as center of mass. Okay, we will briefly try to understand what is center of mass and what is its significance in any system containing more than one particle. Okay, so let me take a simple example. So I have a horizontal rod, metal rod, and I will tie two weighing blocks, okay, two weight blocks of equal masses, okay, m1 kg on both end of the metal bar, okay, and by using a vertical bar, I will try to keep this metal bar in the horizontal position, okay, and you know that where exactly you have to keep this metal bar, vertical bar, so that this horizontal horizontal bar remains always horizontal. So there is some balancing point present somewhere here, such that if I keep this vertical metal bar at that balancing point, then this system will remain horizontal or will remain balanced, okay, and that point without no doubt you can say it is the midpoint, or it is the exact center of this metal bar. Okay, so if the length of this metal bar is L, the balancing point is at L by 2. Okay, if I move this vertical bar away from this point L by 2 in either direction, either to the right or to the left, in any direction, if I rotate, what will happen? This system will not remain in horizontal position, and the whole system will either tilt to the right or it will tilt to the left, depending on in which direction I have moved the vertical bar. So this represents a balancing point, or it is an imaginary point, okay, which is exactly at the center. Now what I will do is the same horizontal bar, but on one end I have kept a weight of m1 kg. On the other hand, I have increased the weight. Okay, I have doubled it, so it is now 2 into m1 kg. Now if I use the vertical bar, same vertical bar, and keep it at the same point, at the midpoint L by 2, assuming that that would be the balancing point. Okay, you know that this entire system will not be balanced, it will be imbalanced, and the particle will rotate, or it will tilt towards the uh, uh, end where you have heavier mass. Okay, so in this case the entire system will rotate or tilt towards right where you have more mass. Okay, so again, to keep the balance or to restore the balance, what we have to do is we have to shift this vertical bar to the right side. So somewhere here I have to shift this vertical bar somewhere to the right side. So again the balance is restored, the entire system will again remain horizontal. So there is a shift of this balancing point towards heavier mass. So what we try to observe or see here is, for any two particle system there is, or for any system there is a sort of imaginary point which acts as a balancing point. Okay, balancing point. And if the system is homogeneous, okay, if the system is homogeneous, as in here, the balancing point will be at a particular point which is the average of the position of all the particles. For example, here the balancing point is in the exact midpoint between the two masses. But if the system is non-homogeneous here, because you have greater mass on one side of the metal bar, okay, so in such cases this balancing point will be more towards the heavier mass. So in this case the balancing point is somewhere here. If I take it as O dash and it as O, so the balancing point has shifted from O to O dash, that is towards heavier mass. Okay, so any system containing more than one particle, okay, contains an imaginary point. Not necessarily that imaginary point exists on one of the particle, it may exist somewhere in between. Okay, and that point acts as a balancing point, and that point is called as the center of mass. Okay, point is called as center of mass. So here O represents the center of mass, abbreviated as Cm. So here O dash represents the center of mass, which acts as a balancing point, and it is always about the center of mass the particle is tilting or rotating. Okay, so if I try to rotate this type of system, it will always rotate about its center of mass, okay, which is a type of balancing point. So this imaginary point is very helpful in physical problems, because it simplifies the mathematical description to a great extent. Okay, already we studied, okay, how the method of separation of variable simplifies a three-dimensional problem into one-dimensional problem. This concept of center of mass is also helpful, where a system containing many particles can be replaced by a system containing one imaginary particle. What I am saying, I will explain it later. So the center of mass is a very important concept in physics. Now let us straight away go to the system containing two particles rotating about this balancing point called as center of mass. Okay, so first let us define a rigid rotator. Okay, so a rigid rotator, which is a model that we use to explain a diatomic molecule. So rigid rotator contains two particles, say for example particle m1 and another particle m2. Okay, clearly m1 is much greater than m2, and the distance between the centers of these two particles is taken as r. Okay, if it is a diatomic molecule, this r represents the bond length, that is the distance between the centers of the nuclei of two atoms. So r represents the distance between the two particles, and we are assuming that this r is rigid, that is the value of r is fixed, you cannot change it. That is why this model is called as a rigid rotator. What does it mean? When the system is rotating, it does not affect the distance between these two particles. So the distance between the two particles is always fixed. If it is a diatomic molecule, a rotating diatomic molecule, the bond length is always fixed. Of course it is not true, but we are assuming that it is fixed. That is why this model is called as rigid rotator model. So in rigid rotator model, r is assumed to be fixed or rigid. Okay, so that is why we call it as a rigid rotator model. Now, as I explained earlier, for a system containing more than one particle, we can imagine a point called as the center of mass. This point is an imaginary point and it acts as some kind of balancing point. So, and also the center of mass is always close to the particle which is heavier. So in this case, the center of mass should be somewhere, say for example here. I will take it as O, representing the center of mass which is closer to the mass m1. If the two masses involved m1 and m2 were equal, then the center of mass would be at the exact center between these two particles. But since here m1 is greater than m2, the center of mass is close to the heavier mass. And as I increase the mass m1, the center of mass will move closer and closer to this heavier particle. And if this m1 becomes infinity, okay, then the center of mass would be located exactly at the center of this particle m1. Okay, if m1 is infinite mass. So as I already told you, when such particle is rotating, it is rotating about this balancing point, which is nothing but the center of mass. So let us draw an imaginary axis passing through the center of mass. An imaginary axis passing through this center of mass. So when this molecule is rotating, it is actually rotating about this axis which passes through the center of mass. And when this rigid rotator, or when this two particle system rotates, you can observe that this each particle is rotating about the center of mass. So each particle is exhibiting its own rotational motion about the center of mass. Let r1 be the distance of the center of the first particle from the center of mass, and r2 is the distance of the second particle from the center of mass. And we can observe that the total length r between the two particles is r1 plus r2. So the bond length r, or the distance between the two particles r, is equal to r1, that is the distance of the first particle from the center of mass, plus r2, that is the distance of the second particle from the center of mass. And this is always a fixed value because it is a rigid rotator, and each particle is actually rotating about the center of mass. So I will use a different colored sketch pen to indicate the rotation. So this is the rotation of the first particle about the center of mass. Oh, sorry. Okay, so this represents the rotation of the heavier particle about the center of mass, and this represents, okay, the rotation of the second particle from the center of mass. So the two particles are rotating about each other about the center of mass. The smaller particle is rotating with a greater distance r2 from the center of mass, whereas the heavier particle is rotating about the center of mass with a smaller distance r1. So this model can be treated as similar to the planetary motion. So for example, Earth is revolving around the Sun. Suppose if we treat the mass of the Sun as infinite, then we can assume that the mass the Sun is stationary, it is not rotating. But if we consider the mass of Sun as finite, then the rotation of the Earth around the Sun may be explained by using this model. So the Earth is rotating about the center of mass of the Sun Earth system, and similarly Sun is also revolving about the center of mass with a smaller radius. So this is how the rotation of a two particle system such as a rigid rotator actually looks. Okay, and if both the particles are moving with the velocity, same angular velocity, okay, or same velocity v. So both the particles are moving with the same velocity v. Now yes, same velocity v. If I made a mistake, with same angular velocity omega, okay, they are traveling with the same angular velocity omega. So the v1, the velocity of the particle m1, can be written as r1 into omega, r1 into omega, where r1 is the radius of the circular motion of the particle having mass m1, and v1 is the velocity. The velocity v2 of the second particle can be written as r2 into omega, okay, where r2 represents the radius of the circular motion or the rotational motion exhibited by the particle of mass m2. So the both particles are rotating about the center of mass with same angular velocity, but their linear velocities are different because the radius of their circular motions are different. So the kinetic energy, the total kinetic energy is the kinetic energy of the first particle plus the kinetic energy of the second particle, okay, half m1 v1 square plus half m2 v2 square. That is, the kinetic energy is equal to half m1 v1 is r1 omega square plus half m2 v2, that is r2 omega square, which is half m1 r1 square omega square plus half m2 r2 square into omega square, which is half m1 r1 square plus m2 r2 square into omega square. Kinetic energy. Okay, generally we know that for rotational motion, the kinetic energy for rotational motion, okay, is written as kinetic energy is equal to half into I omega square. Okay, let me take it as equation 2 and equation 3. In the previous example of a single particle rotating about the system, we had arrived at this equation that kinetic energy is equal to half I omega square, where I stands for moment of inertia and omega is the angular velocity. So if I compare these two equations, we can write equation 2 in the form of equation 3 if we allow the moment of inertia I to take value m1 r1 square plus m2 r2 square. So the kinetic energy of such system can be written as half into I omega square, where we have taken I, the moment of inertia, as m1 r1 square plus m2 r2 square. So if I have a single rotating particle, its moment of inertia is calculated as I is equal to mr square. But if I have two particles rotating about each other, about the center of mass, then this is the formula for calculating the moment of inertia. So for a two particle system, this is for a two particle system, okay, the moment of inertia I is equal to m1 r1 square, okay, the moment of inertia, and kinetic energy is half I omega square. Now let us concentrate on this balancing point. Okay, there is a mathematical condition for this balancing point. So this center of mass is such a point. Okay, so how to find the center of mass? How to find the center of mass? Okay, so if I have two particles, one particle of mass m1, the other particle is of mass m2, separated by a distance r. Okay, so the center of mass is somewhere here. So this is the center of mass. R1 is the distance of the first particle from the center of mass. R2 is the distance of the second particle from the center of mass. So how to find where exactly is the center of mass? For that we have to use the balancing condition, the equation that m1 r1 should be equal to m2 into r2. So that point which satisfies this condition, a balancing condition, m1 r1 is equal to m2 r2, that point which satisfies this condition is the actual center of mass. Okay, so greater the value of m1, smaller will be the r1, that is the center of mass will be much closer to the heavier particle. So this is the balancing condition, m1 r1 is equal to m2 r2, where r is equal to r1 plus r2. Okay, if I use these two equations, okay, it is easy to show that r1 is equal to m2 divided by m1 plus m2 into r. That is the distance of the first particle from the center of the mass is mass of the second particle divided by total mass into the distance between the two particles r. Similarly, r2, the distance of the second particle from the center of mass, is m1, the mass of the first particle, divided by m1 plus m2, the total mass, into the distance between the two particles. So if I solve these two equations, I end up with these two terms, r1 and r2. Okay, so let me substitute this r1 and r2 in this equation 2. Okay, so I will take it as equation 4. So if I substitute equations 4 in equation 2, then the kinetic energy is equal to half m1, okay, r1 square, that is m2 square r square divided by m1 plus m2 square plus m2 into r2 square. Squaring this will become m1 square r square divided by m1 plus m2 square into omega square. Okay, if I simplify these terms inside the bracket, this is half. In the numerator, m1 m2 is common, and in the denominator, m1 plus m2 square is common. So m1 into m2 divided by m1 plus m2 square is the common term, and what we have left inside the bracket, here I have taken m1 and m2 as common. Okay, so we have left with another term m2 plus, here we have taken m1 as m2 as common, so we are left with another term of m1. If I take r as also common factor, so r square into omega square. So this can be written as kinetic energy of the system is half. So this m1 plus m2 cancels with one term, m1 plus m2, so we get half m1 into m2 divided by m1 plus m2 into r square into omega square. If you look at this term, okay, m1 into m2 divided by m1 plus m2, this term has the unit of mass, because mass into mass divided by mass, so the unit of this term is mass. That I will call as reduced mass, represented by the symbol mu. So it becomes half into mu r square into omega square. Okay, let me take it as equation 5. So now if I compare this equation with here I omega square, so the role played by mu r square is same as the role played by the moment of inertia. So this equation can be written as half into I omega square, where the moment of inertia of the particle is given by I is equal to mu into r square, where what is mu? Where mu is called the reduced mass given by m1 into m2 divided by m1 plus m2, and this is called as reduced mass of the system. It is calculated from the masses of both the particles m1 into m2 divided by m1 plus m2. So the kinetic energy for a two particle system is given by half I omega square, okay, which is similar to this equation half I omega square, where I is equal to mr square. Here I is given as mu into r square. So the equation for a single particle system and the equation for a two particle system looks one and the same. The only difference here is, here you have mass m of the particle. It is replaced by some sort of mass called as reduced mass, which depends on m1 into m2 divided by both the masses, and is given by m1 into m2 divided by m1 plus m2. So what is the use of this result is that we can simplify this overall two particle system into a single particle system. Okay, why? Because at the end, whether we are dealing with a two particle or one particle, at the end we are ending up with similar type of equations. So here also kinetic energy is half I omega square, here also kinetic energy is half I omega square, where I, the moment of inertia, is given by here mr square. Here it is given by a similar term, I is equal to mu r square. So if we compare these two expressions, we see that it is possible to replace this two particle problem by a single particle problem. How do we do that? Let me explain. So what we do mathematically, okay, is we can replace, of course, only mathematically. Physically we are not doing anything. Physically it is a two particle problem, but what we are doing is we are mathematically modeling it. So we can replace mathematically a two particle system of masses m1 and m2 by a single hypothetical particle of mass mu, which is called reduced mass, okay, given by m1 into m2 divided by m1 plus m2. So this is the actual problem existing in reality, but mathematically what we are doing is we are replacing this two particle system by a single particle system, where one of the mass is replaced by an infinite mass, okay, infinite mass at point O, and you have one hypothetical particle of mass mu, which is m1 into m2 divided by m1 plus m2, specified by the values here m1 and m2, and this mass is kept at a distance r from origin, and this mass is actually performing a rotational motion about this point O, and the moment of inertia of this particle is mu r square, okay, or I is equal to m1 into m2 divided by m1 plus m2 into r square, and the kinetic energy is given by half into I omega square, or half into I is mu r square into omega square. So mathematically these two give the same result. Whether I use this model or I use this model, the kinetic energy the moment of inertia of both the models are one and the same. So though these models are physically different, but still mathematically they give the same result. So what we do is we simplify the problem mathematically. So we replace the entire two particle problem by a single particle problem, where we have an imaginary particle of mass equal to reduced mass. So a rigid rotator problem, where you have two atoms or two particles rotating about a center of mass, is replaced by a single hypothetical particle of mass equal to reduced mass mu, which is rotating. Okay, so this is only a mathematical model. In reality, this is what exists in reality. This is only a mathematical model to simplify our mathematics. So this is what we use in rigid rotator. So this concept of center of mass and reduced mass is very important to replace a two particle system by a single particle system. So we will use all these concepts when we apply Schrodinger wave equation to a rigid rotator. So we have defined what is a rigid rotator. Again, we need not define later. So we will use this rigid rotator model to explain the application of Schrodinger wave equation to a rigid rotator model.